Her phone was vibrating in her pocket. She didn't look. She knew who it was. She knew what it meant. And she knew that if she looked, something in her face would change. And if something in her face changed, she would stop being a defendant and start being a mother whose 8-year-old was in surgery 3 miles away. She couldn't be that right now. She needed to be a case. So she stood, hands at her sides, eyes on the judge. The stillness of someone holding everything together by not moving. The landlord's lawyer kept talking. Numbers, months, amounts owed. The arithmetic of 3 months she hadn't paid rent because the money had gone to copays and medications, and the specific grinding cost of a child with a heart that needed fixing. Her phone vibrated again. She didn't look. Judge Arthur Coleman had been watching her for 3 minutes, not the file. Her. He'd seen that expression before. Not in a courtroom. In a hospital waiting room 14 months ago, on his own face, in the reflection of a window at 2 in the morning when his wife was in surgery. And someone had needed him somewhere else, and he hadn't gone. He knew what it cost to stay. "Mrs. Foster," he said, everything stopped. "Is there somewhere you need to be?" She felt the phone in her pocket. She told him the truth. "Stay with me. Subscribe if you're new, because what he does next changes everything." He picked up the phone on his bench. He called the hospital. She'd set 3 alarms. Not because she was a heavy sleeper. She hadn't slept. She'd set them because the morning required things to happen in a specific sequence, and she needed each thing to happen on time, and alarms were the way she made sure the sequence didn't break down because she broke down first. 5:15, wake up. 5:30, Lily's medications. The specific pre-surgery protocol the cardiologist had given her. 2 pills, small glass of water, no food after midnight, which Lily had understood and accepted with the specific, uncomplaining pragmatism of a child who had been dealing with doctors long enough to know that the rules weren't personal. 6 o'clock, get Lily dressed. This had taken longer than planned because Lily had wanted to wear the yellow shirt, the specific yellow shirt with the sunflower on the pocket that she'd had since first grade, and that was technically too small, but that she'd asked for. And Diana had said yes because when your 8-year-old is going into surgery and asks to wear the yellow shirt, you say yes. 6:45. Drive to Le Bonheur. Check in. 7:15. The moment Diana had been dreading since the cardiologist had said the surgery is scheduled for Thursday. The moment where they took Lily through the doors that Diana couldn't go through. And Diana was left standing in a hallway holding a plastic bag with Lily's clothes and Lily's stuffed rabbit named George, and the specific physical weight of being on the wrong side of a door. 7:20. Diana had stood in the hallway for 4 minutes. Then she'd walked to her car. Then she'd driven to the courthouse. The drive was 11 minutes. She'd mapped it 3 times in the preceding week. Not because she didn't know Memphis. She'd lived here her whole life, 34 years, the specific intimacy of a city you'd grown up in and never left. She'd mapped it because she needed to know that 11 minutes was enough. That if she left the hospital at 7:30, she'd be at the courthouse by 7:45. That she'd have time to find Patricia, her legal aid attorney, and go over the documents one more time before the 9 o'clock hearing. She'd needed to know that being in 2 places at once was arithmetically possible, even when it felt like it wasn't. 11 minutes. She'd made it in 9. Patricia Webb had been waiting on the courthouse steps, not pacing, standing. The specific, grounded stillness of a woman who had been doing this for 15 years and had learned that pacing before a hearing took something you needed for the hearing. She'd looked at Diana. "How is she?" She'd said. "In surgery," Diana had said. Patricia had nodded. She hadn't said she'll be fine or try not to worry. She'd been doing this long enough to know that both of those things were what you said when you didn't know what to say, and that Diana didn't need that right now. She'd said, "Let's go over the documents." Diana had loved her for that. The documents were the thing Diana had been able to control. Not the surgery, not the rent she owed, not the eviction notice that had been slipped under her door on a Tuesday in September when she'd been at the hospital with Lily getting the diagnosis that had changed everything. But the documents she could organize. She'd been a medical billing specialist for 9 years. She understood documentation. She understood the specific institutional language that systems used to talk to each other. And she understood how to make a record say what it needed to say clearly enough that the person reading it couldn't pretend they hadn't understood. She documented everything: the diagnosis date, the treatment plan, the financial impact, specific, itemized, the way she'd learned to itemize things for insurance companies, the 2 previous rent extensions Raymond had given her, the payment plan she'd proposed, the letter from her employer confirming she was still employed, but had reduced her hours to accommodate Lily's appointments. She'd built a file that said, "This is not someone who stopped paying rent. This is someone whose child got sick." The file didn't change the law, but it said what needed to be said. She'd thought about Lily on the drive, not about the surgery specifically. She'd been trying not to think about the surgery specifically since the cardiologist had explained what it involved. And she'd sat in his office and nodded and kept her face arranged into the expression of a woman receiving information rather than a mother hearing that someone was going to open her daughter's chest. She'd thought about the yellow shirt, about Lily asking for it at 5:55 this morning, still half asleep, reaching for it from the drawer with the focused certainty of someone who had made a decision in a dream and was executing it upon waking. The sunflower one, Lily had said. "It's a little small," Diana had said. I know, Lily had said. "I still want it." Diana had helped her put it on. The hem hit above Lily's waist now. Lily hadn't cared. She'd looked at herself in the mirror with the expression of someone who was satisfied with a decision. "Good," she'd said. Diana had looked at her daughter in the mirror. At 8 years old, in a yellow shirt with a sunflower on the pocket, she'd taken a breath. She'd said, "You look great." Lily had said, "I know." Diana had laughed. Real laugh, surprised out of her by a child who had no room for false modesty at 6 in the morning on the day of her surgery. She'd held on to that laugh for the drive to the hospital. She was still holding on to it now. Standing in a courtroom at 9:12 in the morning, phone vibrating in her pocket, eyes forward, holding on to her daughter's laugh like it was a fixed point in a room that kept moving. She'd known the hearing was risky without a postponement. Patricia had been honest. "Judge Coleman is new to this court. I don't know how he reads these cases. The procedural argument about the notice is strong, but it depends on him being willing to look at the timeline carefully." "What are the chances?" Diana had asked. Patricia had looked at her. "I don't know," she'd said, "but you have a good file." Diana had nodded. She'd built the file. She had the file. She was standing in the courtroom with the file and her phone vibrating in her pocket and the specific knowledge that 3 miles away her daughter was in surgery, and there was nothing she could do about it except stand here and be a case until the law decided what happened next. She was standing. She was still standing. The phone vibrated again. She didn't look. Raymond Park had bought the building in 2009, not as an investment, as a plan. The specific, modest plan of a man who had worked 23 years as an electrician and had saved carefully and had decided that owning something was better than not owning something, and that rental income was a way of building something that lasted. He had 4 units. Diana was in Unit 3. She'd been there 4 years. He'd raised her rent once in 4 years, $47, 2 years ago, when the property tax had gone up, and he'd passed half of it along and absorbed the other half because Diana had always paid on time, and tenants who paid on time were worth more than $47. He wasn't a villain. He'd told himself that every day for the past 3 months. He wasn't a villain. He was a man with a mortgage and a property tax bill and an insurance premium and a unit that hadn't generated income in 90 days. He was a man who had given Diana 2 extensions already, February, then March, and who had called her in April and said, as gently as he knew how to say it, "Diana, I can't keep extending. I need a plan." She'd given him a plan, a payment plan from legal aid, $400 a month on top of rent until the arrears were cleared. 18 months. He'd looked at the plan. He'd thought about 18 months. He'd said, no, not because he was cruel, because 18 months was 18 months, and he was 62 years old, and he's tired, and he had his own bills, and the plan had felt like another version of waiting, and he'd been waiting since February. He'd filed for eviction the next day. He hadn't known about Lily. Diana hadn't told him. He didn't know why she hadn't told him. He thought about that now, sitting at the plaintiff's table in courtroom 4B, watching his lawyer present the case. He thought about why a woman who was 3 months behind on rent because her daughter had a heart condition hadn't told her landlord about the heart condition. He thought he might know why. He wasn't sure he wanted to know why. Patricia had organized the file into 3 sections. Section 1, the timeline. September 14th, Lily's diagnosis at Le Bonheur Children's Hospital. Diana present from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. September 14th. Eviction notice allegedly served at Diana's apartment. Process server's affidavit claimed hand delivery at 2:47 p.m. Diana was at the hospital at 2:47 p.m. She had a parking receipt, a wristband from the hospital visitor check-in, a text message from the cardiologist's office confirming the 9 a.m. appointment. She was not at her apartment at 2:47 p.m. The notice had not been properly served. Section 2, the financial documentation. Medical bills from September through November. Itemized. The specific, dense language of hospital billing that Diana could read the way other people read English, fluently, without effort, understanding what every code meant and what every adjustment represented. Total out-of-pocket after insurance, $3,847, not including the surgery scheduled for this morning, not including what would come after. Section 3, the payment plan. The proposal legal aid had drafted, the $400 monthly figure, the 18-month timeline, the letter from Diana's employer, the letter from the cardiologist confirming Lily's condition and treatment schedule. Everything documented, everything organized, everything true. Patricia had looked at the file the first time Diana had brought it in and said, "You built this like a billing claim." Diana had said, "That's what I know how to do." Patricia had looked at her. "It's a good file," she'd said. "It has to be," Diana had said. The landlord's lawyer was named Stephen Marsh, 40-something. The specific, practiced efficiency of someone who did this regularly and had learned to do it well. He wasn't unkind. He was presenting a case. The case was, Diana Foster owed $5,541 in unpaid rent. She had been given multiple opportunities to make payment arrangements. She had failed to do so. The eviction notice had been properly served. The court should grant possession of the unit. The case was accurate in most of its facts. It was missing some of them. Diana had watched him present it. She'd listened to the numbers, her numbers, the specific arithmetic of 3 months of her life reduced to a figure, and she'd kept her face hips arranged and her hands still and her phone untouched in her pocket. She'd been doing that for 9 minutes when Judge Coleman had looked up from the file. Not at Stephen Marsh. At her. He'd been watching her for 3 minutes before he spoke. She knew because she'd felt it. Not looked. Felt. The specific, particular weight of someone's attention when it was real rather than procedural. She'd kept her eyes forward. Her phone had vibrated. She hadn't looked. "Mrs. Foster," Judge Coleman had said. Everything had stopped. "Is there somewhere you need to be?" She'd thought about lying, not a real lie, a deflection. "I'm fine, Your Honor." The specific, institutional response of someone who understood that courtrooms weren't places for personal things, and who had come here today specifically because she could keep personal things from showing. She'd been keeping personal things from showing for 3 months. She was very good at it. But Judge Coleman was looking at her the way someone looked at you when they weren't asking about the case, when they were asking about you. And she was so tired. Not physically. The specific bone-deep tiredness of someone who had been holding everything together for so long that the holding itself had become the thing using all her energy. She'd stood there for 1 second. 2, she'd told him the truth. "My daughter is in surgery right now, Your Honor." She'd said it the way she said hard things, plainly, without decoration. The way she'd learned to say hard things because decorating them took energy she didn't have. "I didn't want to. I needed to be here. I didn't have a choice about the date." The courtroom was very quiet. She heard Raymond shift in his chair. She didn't look at him. "How old is your daughter?" Judge Coleman said. 8, Diana said. He looked at her. He looked at the file. He picked up the phone. He'd called information first. Not the hospital directly. The main line for Le Bonheur Children's Hospital, which he'd asked his clerk to find while the courtroom waited in the specific suspended quiet of a room that understood something unusual was happening and had collectively decided to let it happen. Stephen Marsh had started to say something. Judge Coleman had looked at him. Stephen Marsh had stopped. The call connected at 9:23. Judge Coleman had put it on speaker. Not for the room, for the record. Everything in a courtroom went on the record, and this was going on the record. Le Bonheur Children's Hospital, how can I direct your call? This is Judge Arthur Coleman, Shelby County Circuit Court. I need to speak with someone in medical records or patient services regarding a patient who is currently in surgery. A pause. One moment, Your Honor. The hold music was something instrumental, the specific, inoffensive kind that existed in institutional settings to fill silence without adding anything. It played for 40 seconds. Diana stood at the defendant's table. She was looking at the floor. She was not going to look at anyone in this room. She was not going to cry in this courtroom. She had decided that 3 months ago when she'd first understood that this hearing was going to happen and that she was going to have to stand in it. She was not going to cry. This is Karen Whitfield, Patient Services. How can I help you, Your Honor? Ms. Whitfield, I have a matter before my court involving a Miss Diana Foster. I need to verify some dates related to her daughter, a patient at your facility. I'll need to confirm. Is Ms. Foster present and able to provide consent for releasing information? Judge Coleman looked at Diana. Ms. Foster, he said, do you consent to this inquiry? She looked up. Yes, she said. Yes, Your Honor. He looked at the phone. She consents, he said. Thank you. What dates are you looking to verify? September 14th of this year, Judge Coleman said. I need to confirm whether Ms. Foster was present at your facility on that date, and if so, for what hours. The sound of a keyboard. Karen Whitfield typing. The courtroom was so quiet Diana could hear the fluorescent lights. Yes, Karen said. Ms. Foster is listed as accompanying a minor patient on September 14th. Check-in was at 9:07 a.m. Departure recorded at 6:23 p.m. Judge Coleman looked at Patricia. Patricia was already looking at Section 1 of the file, at the process server's affidavit. At 2:47 p.m., Ms. Whitfield, Judge Coleman said. One more question. Yes? Is there a patient by the name of Lily Foster currently in surgery at your facility? A pause, shorter than the others. Yes, Karen said. Lily Foster, age 8. She went into surgery at 7:04 this morning. The courtroom was very still. Can you tell me her current status? Judge Coleman said. Another pause. Diana was looking at the floor. She had her hands clasped in front of her. Her knuckles were pale. Patricia was looking at Diana. Raymond was looking at the table. Stephen Marsh was looking at Judge Coleman. Your Honor, Karen said. The surgery concluded at 9:19 a.m. Lily Foster is in recovery. The attending surgeon has noted that the procedure went well. 9:19. Diana had been standing in this courtroom at 9:19. The phone had been vibrating in her pocket at 9:19. She hadn't looked. She was looking at the floor right now, and she was not going to cry in this courtroom, and she was not going to cry in this courtroom, and she was not going to... Mrs. Foster. Judge Coleman's voice, quiet. Not judicial quiet, the other kind. She looked up. He was looking at her the way he'd been looking at her since the beginning of the hearing, with the specific, settled attention of someone who had decided to see her and was seeing her. Your daughter is out of surgery, he said. She's in recovery. The surgery went well. The room moved. Not physically, the air in it changed. Diana stood at the defendant's table. She kept her face still for exactly 2 more seconds. Then she stopped keeping it still. Not crying. Something quieter and more total than crying. The specific, physical release of someone who had been holding something at maximum tension for 3 months and felt it finally, completely, release. She put one hand on the table. She breathed. Raymond Park had not moved. He was looking at the table in front of him, at his hands, at nothing in particular. He was thinking about September 14th, about a Tuesday in September when he'd filed the paperwork for eviction, and Diana had been at a hospital, finding out that her daughter's heart needed fixing. He was thinking about the process server going to her apartment at 2:47 in the afternoon and slipping a notice under her door. He was thinking about Diana coming home that evening, about what she'd found, about what that had been like. He hadn't thought about that before. He'd thought about the money, about the mortgage, about the extensions he'd already given, and the plan that had felt like more waiting. He hadn't thought about what it was like to come home from the hospital with news like that and find an eviction notice under your door. He was thinking about it now. He couldn't stop thinking about it now. Judge Coleman set the phone down. He looked at Stephen Marsh. "Counselor," he said. "The process server's affidavit claims hand delivery of the eviction notice to Ms. Foster at her residence on September 14th at 2:47 p.m. "That's correct, Your Honor," Stephen said. "Hospital records confirm Ms. Foster was present at Le Bonheur Children's Hospital from 9:07 a.m. to 6:23 p.m. on that date," Judge Coleman said. "She was not at her residence at 2:47 p.m. She could not have received hand delivery." Stephen Marsh looked at his file, at the affidavit, at a piece of paper that had seemed unassailable an hour ago and now had a problem. "Your Honor, the affidavit has a factual error," Judge Coleman said, not with anger, with the specific, even delivery, of someone stating something that was now simply true, which means the notice was not properly served, which means the eviction proceedings are procedurally defective. He looked at both tables. "I'm going to continue this case for 30 days, he said, "during which time I'd strongly suggest both parties use the legal aid payment plan framework that's already been drafted and is in this file." He looked at Raymond's table. "Mr. Park." Raymond looked up. "Yes, Your Honor," he said. "Have you reviewed the payment plan proposal that was submitted to you in April?" "Yes," Raymond said. "And you rejected it?" the judge said. "Yes," Raymond said. Judge Coleman looked at him, not with judgment, with the specific patient attention of someone who had been on a bench for 20 years and understood that people made decisions in the information they had, and sometimes the information was incomplete. "You may want to review it again," he said, "with today's information." Raymond looked at the table. "Yes, Your Honor," he said. Court recessed at 9:41. Diana stood at the defendant's table for a moment after the judge left. Patricia put a hand on her arm. "You okay?" she said. Diana looked at her. She thought about the question, about everything the question contained. "I need to go to the hospital," she said. "Go," Patricia said. She picked up her file. She walked toward the door. She took her phone out of her pocket. 6 missed calls, all from the hospital, all from the same number, all from before 9:19. She called back. "A Nurse Foster," the nurse said. "We've been trying to reach you. Lily is out of surgery. She's asking for you." Diana walked through the courthouse door, into the November air, into the specific, cold clarity of a morning that was still happening. "I'm on my way," she said. "She keeps asking if you're coming," the nurse said. "Tell her I'm coming," Diana said. "Tell her I've been here the whole time." He sat in his car for 22 minutes, not going anywhere, just sitting. The courthouse parking lot on a Thursday morning in November. Other people coming and going, the specific and different flow of a place that had business to conduct, regardless of what had just happened in courtroom 4B. He sat. He thought about Diana coming home on September 14th. He couldn't stop thinking about that. He'd been thinking about it since the moment Karen Whitfield had said she went into surgery at 7:04 this morning, and the courtroom had gone so quiet, he'd been able to hear Raymond's own breathing. He thought about what it had been like, not what he knew, what he could imagine. The drive home from the hospital. 11 minutes, Diana had said to Patricia at some point before the hearing, and Raymond had filed it away without knowing he was filing it away. 11 minutes. Diana driving home after 9 hours at the hospital where she'd been told her daughter's heart needed surgery. 11 minutes of processing that, or not processing it, of holding it in the specific, careful way you held things that were too large to process while you were still in motion. Parking the car, walking up the stairs to Unit 3. Seeing the white envelope on the floor inside the door, picking it up, reading it. Raymond had written the eviction notice himself. He knew exactly what it said. He knew exactly what it would have felt like to read it after the day she'd had. He sat in his car. He thought about that for a long time. He'd bought the building for a plan. He'd told himself that every day for 3 months, that this was business, that he had a mortgage, that he'd already given 2 extensions, that the payment plan had asked for too much time. All of that was still true. He was having trouble caring about any of it. Not permanently. He understood that the mortgage existed regardless of what had happened in a courtroom this morning. He understood that the financial reality hadn't changed. He understood that he was 62 years old and tired and had limits, and that those limits were real. But he was having trouble caring about them right now. Right now, he was thinking about a woman who had spent 3 months dealing with a sick child, an unpaid rent, and an eviction notice, and had shown up to a courtroom on the morning of her daughter's surgery because she didn't have a choice, and had stood there with her phone vibrating in her pocket and hadn't looked. He called his son at 10:15. David, 34, lived in Nashville. Called on Sundays, visited at Christmas, had his father's same habit of thinking before speaking that people sometimes mistook for coldness. David answered on the second ring. Dad, everything okay? I need to talk something through, Raymond said. Okay, David said. The specific, immediate okay of someone who had grown up with a father who didn't say I need to talk something through unless he meant it, Raymond told him. Not everything. The shape of it, the tenant, the unpaid rent, the payment plan he'd rejected, the hearing this morning, what the judge had found, what the hospital had said. David listened. When Raymond finished, David was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do? He said. I don't know, Raymond said. Yes, you do, David said. Raymond looked at the courthouse. At the building where a woman had stood an hour ago, with her phone vibrating in her pocket and her daughter in surgery. I rejected the payment plan because 18 months felt like too long, Raymond said. 18 months is too long, David said. Yes, Raymond said. But, David said. But, Raymond said. He looked at his hands on the steering wheel. She has a sick kid, he said. Yes, David said. And she showed up to a courthouse on the morning of her kid's surgery, Raymond said. Yes, David said. Because she didn't have a choice, Raymond said. Dad, David said. Yeah, Raymond said. What would Mom have done? David said. Raymond sat with that. His wife, Carol, gone 6 years. The woman who had talked him into buying the building in the first place, because she'd believed in the plan, and in him, and in the specific patient optimism of someone who understood that good things took time. Carol had never met Diana. But Raymond knew what Carol would have done. He'd known since the moment Karen Whitfield said the surgery went well, and he'd sat at a plaintiff's table in a courtroom and understood what he'd been part of. She would have called her, Raymond said. Yes, David said. From the parking lot, Raymond said. Probably, David said. Raymond looked at his phone. He had Diana's number. He'd had it for 4 years. David, he said. Yeah, David said. Am I doing the right thing? Raymond said. David was quiet for a moment. I think you're doing the thing you're going to be able to live with, David said, which is usually the same thing. Raymond nodded. He hung up. He looked at Diana's number. He called. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't answer. She was at the hospital. He left a voicemail. He'd thought about what to say in the car, and he'd decided the only thing that made sense was the truth. Plainly, the way Carol had always said things needed to be said. Deanna, this is Raymond Park. I want you to know that I didn't know about your daughter. I didn't know about the surgery, or the diagnosis, or any of it. I understand if that doesn't change anything, but I wanted you to know. He paused. The payment plan, he said. The one legal aid put together. I'd like to talk about it again. On your timeline. When you can. Another pause. I hope your daughter is okay. I mean that. He hung up. He sat in the parking lot for another few minutes. Then he drove home. Patricia was on the courthouse steps when he walked out. She'd been making calls, the specific, efficient post-hearing communication of a lawyer who had other cases and other clients, and a day that continued regardless of what had happened in 4B. She saw Raymond coming toward her and stopped. He stopped too. They looked at each other. The specific, slightly awkward positioning of two people who had been on opposite sides of something and were now in the same space without the structure of a courtroom to organize them. "Mr. Park," she said. "Mrs. Webb," he said. He looked at the courthouse door. "The payment plan," he said. "I left Diana a voicemail. I want to revisit it." Patricia looked at him, not with suspicion, with the careful assessing attention of someone who had been doing this for 15 years and had learned to read the difference between a gesture and a decision. This looked like a decision. "Okay," she said. "I rejected it because 18 months was too long," he said. "It is a long time," she said. "Do you have flexibility on the timeline?" he said. "That depends on what you're offering," she said. He thought about the mortgage, about the property tax, about the insurance premium, about Carol saying good things take time. 12 months, he said. Same monthly amount. "I'll waive the late fees." Patricia looked at him. "That's a meaningful concession," she said. "I know," he said. She looked at the courthouse door, at the place where Diana had walked out 20 minutes ago with her phone to her ear. "I'll talk to her," Patricia said, "when she's ready." "Take your time," he said. He started toward the parking lot. "Mr. Park," Patricia said. He turned. She was looking at him. "Thank you," she said. He looked at her. "I didn't know," he said. "I know," she said. "Thank you anyway." He walked to his car. Le Bonheur Children's Hospital, on a Thursday morning, looked like all children's hospitals looked. The specific, deliberate cheerfulness of a place that understood. It was asking very hard things of very small people, and had decided that color and light were the least it could offer in return. Murals on the walls, fish tanks in the lobby, a volunteer at the information desk with the practiced warmth of someone who had learned that the people coming through these doors needed something specific from the first face they saw. Diana had been through these doors 4 times in the past 3 months. She knew the layout. She knew which elevator was fastest. She knew the recovery ward was on the 4th floor and that the nurse's station was to the left when you stepped off and that you needed to check in before they'd let you through the second set of doors. She knew all of it. She still walked faster than she needed to. The nurse at the station was named Beverly. Diana knew her from the pre-surgical consultations. A woman in her 50s with the specific, unflappable competence of someone who had been doing this long enough to have seen everything and had decided that seeing everything was not a reason to stop caring about any of it. "Mrs. Foster," Beverly said. "How is she?" Diana said. "She's doing great," Beverly said. "Surgery went clean." Dr. Okafor was very pleased. She came around the desk. "She's been asking for you since she woke up." "How long has she been awake?" Diana said. "About 40 minutes, Beverly said. Diana had been in a courtroom 40 minutes ago. She didn't say that. "Can I go in?" she said. "Of course," Beverly said. "Room 412. She stood outside room 412 for a moment. Not long, 10 seconds, maybe less. Just enough to do the things she'd been doing all morning in reverse. All morning, she'd been making her face into something controlled. Something that could stand in a courtroom and listen to numbers and hold a phone in a pocket and not look. Now she needed to make it into something else. Something that said, "I'm here. Everything is okay. You're safe." Something that was true. Everything Lily was okay. She opened the door. Lily was smaller in the hospital bed than she was at home. That was the thing Diana always noticed. Not the monitors, not the IV line, not the specific medical arrangement of a room designed for recovery. The smallness. At home, Lily took up space the way children took up space, expansively, without apology, her things everywhere, her presence filling rooms that were too big for one small person. Here she was, 8 years old in a bed that was sized for her, and she was still small. She had a nasal cannula. She had an IV in her left hand. She had the yellow shirt. They'd let her keep it under the hospital gown. Because Diana had asked, and the nurse had said yes, and Beverly had made a note in the chart. She had George tucked against her side. She was awake. She was looking at the door. When Diana came in, Lily's face did the thing Diana had been holding on to all morning, the specific, total relief of a child who had been waiting for one person and that person had arrived. "Mom," she said. Not loud, her voice was still rough from the anesthesia, but clear. Diana crossed the room. She sat on the edge of the bed. She took Lily's hand, the right one, not the one with the IV, and she held it. "Hey," she said. "You came," Lily said. "I told you I would," Diana said. "I know," said, "but I couldn't see you." Diana looked at her. At the yellow shirt visible at the neckline of the hospital gown. At George tucked against her side. At 8 years old, who had gone into surgery without her mother in the room and had woken up and asked for her, and had waited 40 minutes and was now holding her hand. "I was there," Diana said. "I was just in a different room." Lily looked at her. "What room?" she said. Diana thought about courtroom 4B, about standing at a table with her phone vibrating in her pocket, about Judge Coleman picking up the phone, about Karen Whitfield saying the surgery concluded at 9:19 a.m., about not crying in that courtroom and then crying anyway. "A room where I was making sure we still have our home," she said. Lily processed that. She was a child who processed things, not quickly, thoroughly. She'd inherited it from Diana, the habit of sitting with information before deciding what to do with it. "Did it work?" she said. "For now," Diana said. "Yes, good," Lily said. She settled back against the pillow. She didn't let go of Diana's hand. "Mom," she said. "Yeah," Diana said. "I was scared," Lily said. "I know," Diana said. "Were you scared?" Lily said. Diana looked at her daughter, at the monitors, at the IV, at the sunflower on the yellow shirt. "Yes," she said. "Of what?" Lily said. Diana thought about it. Not the surgery. Lily knew she'd been scared about the surgery. That wasn't what Lily was asking. She was asking about the other thing. The thing an 8-year-old who processed everything thoroughly had noticed without being told. Of not being able to be in both places at once, Diana said. Lily was quiet for a moment. "You can't be in two places at once," she said. "No," Diana said. "Nobody can," Lily said. "No," Diana said. "So you picked the one that needed you more," Lily said. Diana looked at her. "The hearing needed you," Lily said. "I had the doctors." Lily. "I knew you'd come," Lily said. "After." She looked at the ceiling. "I knew you'd come after." Diana held her hand. She thought about an 8-year-old who had gone into surgery alone because her mother had been in a courtroom fighting for their home and who had understood why without being told. She thought about what kind of person that was. She thought about what kind of person you had to be to raise that kind of person. She didn't know if she was that person. She was trying. Dr. Okafor came in at 11, 40-something. The specific, unhurried confidence of a surgeon who had done what she came to do and had done it well, and was now in the part of the work that was about the person rather than the procedure. She looked at Lily. She looked at Diana. She did beautifully, Dr. Okafor said. The repair was clean. We're looking at one night for observation, and then she can go home tomorrow. Tomorrow, Diana said. Tomorrow, Dr. Okafor said. She'll need to take it easy for 2 to 3 weeks. I'll have Beverly go over the discharge instructions. She looked at Lily. How are you feeling? She said. Tired, Lily said, and hungry. Both of those are excellent signs, Dr. Okafor said. She looked at Diana. Are you okay? She said. Not medically, personally. The question of a person talking to another person. Diana thought about the morning, about 3 alarms, about the yellow shirt, about 11 minutes and 9 minutes, and the specific, grinding arithmetic of being in two places at once, about a judge who had picked up a phone, about a landlord sitting in a parking lot, about Lily saying I knew you'd come after. I'm getting there, she said. Dr. Okafor nodded. She left. Diana looked at Lily. Lily was looking at the ceiling with the focused, slightly drowsy attention of someone who was tired and hungry and had just had heart surgery and was still, somehow, processing. Mom, she said. Yeah, Diana said. The judge, Lily said. The one who called the hospital. Diana looked at her. Beverly told me, Lily said. She said a judge called from the courtroom. Yes, Diana said. Why did he do that? Lily said. Diana thought about Judge Coleman, about 20 years on the federal bench, about a hospital waiting room 14 months ago, about is there somewhere you need to be, about the specific, settled attention of someone who had decided to see her and was seeing her. He looked up from his paperwork, Diana said, and he saw me. Lily processed that. That's good, she said. Yes, Diana said. People should do that more, Lily said. Yes, Diana said, they should. Lily closed her eyes, not asleep, resting. The specific, comfortable rest of someone who had been through something hard and was now in a safe place with someone they trusted. Diana sat on the edge of the bed. She held Lily's hand. She looked at the sunflower on the yellow shirt. She thought about the morning, about all of it, about standing in a courtroom with her phone vibrating in her pocket and her daughter in surgery 3 miles away and the specific impossible demand of being in two places at once. She'd been in one place, and somehow the other place had been handled. Not perfectly, not without cost, but handled. She sat with Lily. She held her hand. She let the morning settle. He ate lunch alone. This was not unusual. He ate lunch alone most days, a habit from the federal bench, where lunch had been the 1 hour of the day that belonged entirely to him, the specific, necessary solitude of someone who spent the rest of his hours in the company of other people's problems. He went to the same place every Thursday. A diner 4 blocks from the courthouse, the kind of place that had been there since before he was born and knew it and didn't apologize for it. Corner booth, coffee without asking. A menu he hadn't needed to read in 11 years. He ordered the usual. He sat. He thought about the morning. He'd been a judge for 23 years. Federal bench for 20 of them. The specific elevated remove of a court that dealt in constitutional questions and corporate disputes and cases that would be cited in law school classrooms for decades. Cases where the law was the thing and the people were the context. He'd been good at it. He'd been very good at it. He'd also been, somewhere in the middle of it, slowly and without fully noticing, becoming someone who processed cases rather than saw people, not from cruelty, from habit. The habit of a system that moved a certain way and rewarded certain things, and that he'd been inside for long enough that its rhythms had become his rhythms. Margaret had noticed. His wife had noticed years before he had. She'd said it once, not as an accusation, as an observation, the way she said things she wanted him to actually hear. Arthur, you used to tell me about the people in your cases. Now you tell me about the cases. He'd thought about that for a long time. He was still thinking about it. Margaret had been sick for 14 months. Breast cancer. The specific grinding timeline of a disease that moved slower than you wanted it to move and faster than you were ready for. He'd transferred back to Memphis when she was diagnosed. Not immediately, he'd tried to manage it from the distance of his federal posting for 3 months, flying back on weekends, calling every evening, telling himself and her and everyone who asked that he was managing it. Margaret had said, "Arthur, come home." He'd come home. He'd sat with her through 14 months of treatment and remission and recurrence, and the specific, terrible education of learning what mattered when the things you'd thought mattered stopped being available. She died on a Tuesday, 14 months ago. He'd gone back to work the following Monday. Not because he was ready, because sitting in the house alone was the alternative, and he'd chosen work over the alternative. He was still choosing work over the alternative. Some days it was the right choice. Some days it was just the choice he knew how to make. He'd recognized Diana's expression the moment she walked in, not intellectually, in his body. The specific physical recognition of something you'd felt yourself. He'd felt it in a hospital waiting room. The night before Margaret's final surgery, someone had called him. A clerk, a scheduling issue, something that had required his attention at 11 p.m. in a waiting room when his wife was in an operating room 40 feet away. He'd taken the call. He'd handled the issue. He'd sat in the waiting room afterward with the phone in his hand and understood what it had cost him to take that call. Not the time, the presence, the specific, irreplaceable presence of someone who had been somewhere else in his mind while his wife was in surgery. He'd taken the call. He'd always taken the call. He'd been thinking about that since Margaret died. He'd been thinking about it this morning when Diana Foster had stood at the defendant's table, with her phone vibrating in her pocket and hadn't looked. She hadn't looked. He'd taken the call. He thought about that for a long time over lunch. His coffee was cold by the time he stopped thinking. He drank it anyway. He thought about what he'd done in the courtroom. The phone call to the hospital, procedurally, it was defensible. He'd needed to verify a date for the record. The call had produced information relevant to the case. The fact that it had also produced information about Lily's surgery was adjacent to the legal purpose, not the legal purpose itself. He knew that. He also knew that wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that he'd looked at Diana Foster and seen someone who was somewhere else while standing completely still. And he'd known exactly what that cost, and he'd made a decision. Not about the law, about the person. He wasn't sure how he felt about that. He was a judge. His job was the law. His job was not to look up from files and see people and make decisions based on what he saw. Except that was also exactly what his job was. That was the thing he'd been trying to remember since Margaret died, that the law existed for people, not the other way around. He paid for lunch. He walked back to the courthouse. He had 2 more hearings in the afternoon. He sat at his bench. He opened the first file. He looked at the name on it. He thought, who is this person? Not what is this case. Who is this person? He'd been asking himself that question for 11 months. Some days he was better at answering it than others. Today he thought he'd answered it once. He was going to try to answer it again. At fair 15, his clerk knocked on his office door. Judge Coleman, she said. There's a letter, hand delivered, from a Patricia Webb. She's a legal aid attorney. I know who she is, he said. Bring it in. The letter was short, 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph confirmed that Diana Foster and Raymond Park had agreed to a modified payment plan. 12 months, same monthly figure, late fees waived. The agreement had been signed that afternoon. The second paragraph confirmed that Diana Foster's daughter had been discharged from Le Bonheur Children's Hospital the following day. He'd read ahead. The letter was dated Friday. In good health. He stopped. He read the second paragraph again. Good health. He sat with that for a moment. The third paragraph was short. Your Honor, on behalf of my client and on my own behalf, I want to thank you for what you did this morning. Not the procedural finding, though that mattered. For looking up. My client asked me to include this. She said you'd know what it meant. Below Patricia's signature was a single line in different handwriting. Diana's handwriting. The surgery went well. She's wearing the yellow shirt. DF. He looked at it. He didn't know what the yellow shirt was. He understood what it meant. He put the letter on his desk. He looked at the window. At Memphis in November doing what Memphis did. He thought about Margaret, about what she would say. She would say, you looked up, Arthur. He would say, I should have looked up sooner. She would say, yes, but you looked up. He thought about Diana standing in a courtroom with her phone vibrating in her pocket. He thought about himself in a waiting room taking a call. 2 people who had been somewhere else while something important was happening. One of them had looked up. He was glad it had been him. He was going to keep trying to be the version of himself that looked up. Not for the cases, for the people. He took the letter home. He put it on the kitchen table. He made dinner, the specific, simple dinner, of someone who had been cooking for one for 14 months and had gotten adequate at it without ever getting good at it. He ate. He looked at the letter, at Diana's handwriting, at the yellow shirt. He thought about Margaret, about the things she'd left behind. Not the big things. Those were where he expected to find her, and they were where she was. In the photographs. In the book she'd annotated in her careful handwriting. In the chair by the window where she'd read. In the small things. A coffee mug she'd bought at a museum gift shop that said something she'd found funny and that he'd never found funny until after she was gone, and now found funny every morning. A note on the refrigerator from 4 years ago that he hadn't taken down. A yellow cardigan on the hook by the door. He hadn't moved the cardigan. He wasn't going to move the cardigan. Some things stayed where they were. He looked at Diana's letter. He thought about Lily wearing the yellow shirt into surgery. He thought about the things people carried into hard places. About what they chose to carry. About why. He folded the letter. He put it in his jacket pocket. against his chest. He went to bed. He thought he might sleep. She came home on Friday. Not dramatically, the specific, organized exit of a hospital discharge, which Diana had learned involved more paperwork than she expected and less ceremony than the occasion seemed to warrant. Forms. Instructions. A folder from Beverly with everything written down because Beverly understood that people leaving hospitals were not always in a state to retain verbal information. Diana had read every page twice in the elevator. She read things twice. It was the habit of someone who had learned that details mattered, and that missing a detail cost more than the time it took to check. Lily had been patient. She'd sat in the wheelchair, hospital policy, regardless of how well you felt, with George in her lap and the yellow shirt on, and the specific, alert attention of someone who had been in a small room for 24 hours and was ready to see something that wasn't a ceiling. "Can we get pancakes?" She'd said in the elevator. "You just had heart surgery," Diana had said. "The doctor said I could eat normally," Lily had said. She said soft foods for the first few days, Diana had said. "Pancakes are soft," Lily had said. Diana had looked at her, at 8 years old, making a technically accurate medical argument from a wheelchair 24 hours after heart surgery. "Pancakes," Diana had said. Lily had nodded. Like that was settled. They'd gone to the place on Poplar. The one Lily called the good pancake place, a distinction Diana had never fully interrogated because there were apparently multiple pancake places in Lily's taxonomy, and only one of them was good, and this was that one. Lily had eaten slowly, not because she was tired, because she was paying attention to everything. The other tables, the waitress, the specific, interested attention of a child who had been in a hospital room for 24 hours and was now recalibrating to the world. Diana had watched her eat. She'd thought about Raymond's voicemail. She'd listened to it in the parking lot of the hospital the previous afternoon. Standing beside her car in the November cold, Beverly's folder under her arm, the specific, slightly unreal quality of a moment that had been harder to prepare for than she'd expected. Raymond Park. Leaving a voicemail. From a parking lot. She'd listened to it twice. She hadn't called back yet. She wasn't sure what to say. Not because she was angry. She'd moved past anger somewhere around the second month, when she'd understood that anger was a thing she couldn't afford to carry alongside everything else she was carrying. She wasn't sure because she didn't know yet what the voicemail meant. Not the words. She'd understood the words. The words were clear and honest and more than she'd expected. What she didn't know was what came after the words. What you did with a landlord who hadn't known and now knew and had called from a parking lot. She'd figure it out. She had time. 30 days, Judge Coleman had said. She had 30 days. "Mom," Lily said. "Yeah," Diana said. Lily was looking at her pancake. She had the specific looking at the plate expression that meant she was working up to something. Diana waited. She'd learned to wait. "Was the judge nice?" Lily said. Diana thought about Judge Coleman, about "Is there somewhere you need to be?" about the phone on the bench, about the way he'd said "Your daughter is out of surgery," with the specific, quiet attention of someone who understood what those words meant to the person receiving them. "He was," Diana said. He looked up. Lily looked at her. "What does that mean?" she said. Diana thought about how to explain it, about courtrooms and files and the specific institutional momentum of a system that moved a certain way and expected the people in it to move with it, about someone who had stopped moving with it for a moment. "Sometimes people are so focused on their paperwork," Diana said, "that they forget to look at the person the paperwork is about." Lily processed that. "And he looked," she said. "Yes," Diana said. "At you," Lily said. "Yes," Diana said. Lily ate a piece of pancake, she thought. "Beverly said he called the hospital from the courtroom," she said. "Yes," Diana said. "To find out if I was okay?" Lily said. Diana thought about the actual reason for the call, the September 14th date, the process server's affidavit, the procedural defect that had been the legal basis for everything that followed. She thought about how to explain that to an 8-year-old. "He called to find out something important about the case," she said. "And while he was on the phone, he found out you were okay too." Lily processed that. So it was both, she said. Yes, Diana said, it was both. Good, Lily said. I like when things are both. Diana looked at her. At 8 years old, finding the charitable interpretation without being told to look for it. She thought about where that came from. She didn't know. Some things you raised and some things arrived. Lily had arrived with that particular quality, the specific, natural generosity of someone who defaulted to the interpretation that made most sense of people. Diana hoped she'd kept it intact. She thought she had. Mom, Lily said. Yeah, Diana said. Are we going to have to move? She said. The table was quiet. Diana had been waiting for that question. Not dreading it, waiting for it. Lily processed everything. This was a thing that needed processing. I don't know yet, Diana said. Lily looked at her. Tell me what you do know, she said. Diana looked at her daughter, at the specific, clear-eyed patience of someone who had decided they could handle the truth and wanted it rather than a softened version. She'd always been like that, since she was 4 years old, Diana told her. Not everything, the shape of it, the payment plan, the 30 days, Raymond's voicemail, the possibility, not guaranteed but real, that they would work something out. Lily listened. She ate her pancake. When Diana finished, Lily was quiet for a moment. What happens if we do have to move? She said. We find somewhere else, Diana said. Would we stay in the same school district? Lily said. I'd try, Diana said. My teacher, Lily said, Miss Patterson. I know, Diana said. She lets me read ahead, Lily said. I know, Diana said. That's important, Lily said. Diana looked at her. I'll do everything I can to make sure you keep Miss Patterson, she said. Lily looked at her plate. Okay, she said. Not reassured, satisfied. The specific okay of someone who had received honest information and had decided it was enough to work with. Diana looked at her. At 8 years old, who had just had heart surgery and had eaten pancakes and had asked about school districts and had said okay. She thought about what it took to raise a person who said okay to hard things without pretending they weren't hard. She thought she might be doing it right. She wasn't sure. She was going to keep trying. She called Raymond back that evening. Lily was asleep, the specific, early sleep of someone whose body was working hard at something invisible. Diana had checked on her twice before she sat down at the kitchen table with her phone. She'd thought about what to say. She'd thought about it all afternoon, while Lily napped, while she'd made dinner, while she'd gone over Beverly's discharge instructions for the 3rd time. She dialed. Raymond answered on the 2nd ring. Diana, he said. Raymond, she said. A pause, not uncomfortable, the specific pause of two people who had things to say and were figuring out who was going to start. I got your voicemail, she said. I figured, he said. I wanted to say, she started. You don't have to say anything, he said. I meant what I said. I didn't know. I want you to know that I know that doesn't fix anything. No, she said. It doesn't. But, she said. Another pause. Patricia told me about the modified plan, Diana said. 12 months. Late fees waived. Yes, Raymond said. Why 12? She said. You said 18 was too long. He was quiet for a moment. 18 was too long for the version of this I understood, he said. 12 feels right for the version I understand now. Diana looked at the kitchen table, at the folder from Beverly, at her phone, at the specific ordinary geography of the apartment she'd lived in for 4 years and wanted to keep living in. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. Raymond, she said. Yeah, he said. Why didn't I tell you, she said. About Lily, you asked yourself that. I could hear it in the voicemail. He was quiet. You don't have to. Because, she said, I didn't think it would matter. I didn't think. She stopped. I've spent 3 months making a case, documenting everything, building a file. Because I know that's what systems respond to. She paused. I didn't think telling you about my daughter's heart would change a business decision. Raymond was quiet for a long time. You were probably right, he said. 3 months ago. Yes, she said. I'm sorry, he said, that you were right about that. Diana looked at the kitchen, at the apartment, at 4 years of living in a place that had become the shape of her life. Me too, she said. They talked for a few more minutes. Practical things, the paperwork, the timeline, the first payment date. When they hung up, Diana sat at the table for a while. She thought about Lily saying, "I like when things are both." She thought about this being both. Not resolved, not fixed, not the way she would have chosen for any of this to go, but both. A system that had failed and a person inside it who had looked up. A landlord who hadn't known, and a man who had called from a parking lot. A daughter who had heart surgery and ate pancakes and asked about school districts. Both. All of it both. She turned off the kitchen light. She went to check on Lily. The payment plan was signed on a Monday. Not in a lawyer's office, at Patricia's desk at the legal aid office on Main Street, which was the specific organized chaos of a place that did important work with insufficient resources and had learned to do it anyway. Diana had brought Lily. Not because she'd planned to, because Lily's follow-up appointment had been that morning, and the legal aid office was 4 blocks from the hospital, and it had made more sense logistically than driving home and coming back. Lily had sat in a chair in the corner, with George and a book she'd brought from home. The specific, self-contained patience of a child who had learned that adult business took time, and that having a book made time take less. She'd looked up when Diana signed. She'd looked back at her book. That was all. Patricia had walked them out. At the door, she'd looked at Diana. "It's a good outcome," she'd said. "It's an okay outcome," Diana had said. Patricia had looked at her. "What would a good outcome have been?" she'd said. Diana had thought about it. "Not needing to be here," she'd said. "Not needing a judge to look up. Not needing my daughter's surgery to be the thing that made a landlord reconsider." Patricia had looked at her. "Yes," she'd said. "That would have been better." "But," Diana had said. "But," Patricia had said. "It's what?" Diana had said. Patricia had nodded. "It's what there is," she'd said. She'd looked at Lily, at the book, at George, at 8 years old, who had eaten pancakes and asked about school districts, and was now reading in a chair in a legal aid office while her mother signed paperwork. "She's something," Patricia had said. "Yes," Diana had said. "She is." She'd written the letter to Judge Coleman that afternoon. Not because she owed him one. She didn't owe him anything. That wasn't how gratitude worked. Gratitude wasn't a debt. Because she wanted to. Because he'd looked up, and looking up had mattered. And she wanted him to know it had mattered. She'd sat at the kitchen table with Lily asleep in her room, and she'd thought about what to say. She'd thought about all the ways to say thank you that weren't quite right. "Thank you for what you did." Too formal. "I appreciate your help." Too transactional. "You changed everything." Too large. Not quite accurate. She'd thought about what was actually true. What was actually true was that he'd looked up from a file and seen a person, and that the looking had cost him something: attention, momentum, the specific institutional comfort of staying inside the procedure, and that he'd done it anyway. She'd written, "Your Honor, on the morning of my daughter's surgery, you looked up from your paperwork and you saw me. Not my case. Me. I want you to know that I noticed." She'd paused. She'd added the line about the yellow shirt, not because she expected him to understand it, because it was the truest thing she could say about what the morning had been and what Lily was and what it meant to come out the other side of it, with the yellow shirt and the pancakes and the payment plan and the specific, complicated gratitude of someone who had gotten through something she hadn't been sure she'd get through. She'd folded the letter. She'd given it to Patricia to deliver. She'd felt lighter after. Not because the problem was solved. It wasn't solved. It was managed, which was different. Because she'd said what was true to the person it was true about. That was enough. 3 weeks after the hearing, Diana ran into Craig at the grocery store. "Not the Fresh Mart?" A different one, closer to her apartment. But Craig was there, off duty, in jeans and a jacket, the specific slightly unfamiliar quality of seeing someone out of their work context. He didn't recognize her immediately. She recognized him. The store manager from the Fresh Mart on Carpenter Street. The man who had stood for 47 seconds in a store where every cashier had closed their register. She almost didn't say anything. Then she thought about Diane, about "I need to give it." About all the small choices people made when they thought nobody was watching. She stopped him. "Excuse me," she said. He turned. She told him who she was. Not the whole story. She didn't know the whole story. She knew the part she'd been told by a woman at a legal aid office who had mentioned it in passing, the way people mentioned things they'd heard that had stayed with them. There was a veteran, she said, at your store. 73 cents a few weeks ago. Craig looked at her. Yes, he said. I heard about it, she said. What the cashiers did. What you did after. He looked at her. Word travels, he said. It does, she said. I wanted you to know, I was in a situation recently where someone looked up from what they were doing and saw me. And it changed things. She paused. I think what happened in your store is the same thing. Craig was quiet. I almost didn't go back with the $10, he said. I know, she said. You went back. He looked at the grocery store around them, at the people moving through it. The veterans' cards, he said. Corporate approved the notification system last week. 30 days before expiration, automatic. She looked at him. She started. It's a small thing, he said. Yes, she said. It's also not nothing. He nodded. They stood there for a moment. Two people who had nothing in common except the specific, spreading ripple of a morning in November when some people had chosen to look up. I hope things worked out, he said. Whatever your situation was. Getting there, she said. She walked toward the produce section. He walked toward the checkout. Lily went back to school on a Wednesday, 3 weeks after the surgery, exactly as Dr. Okafor had said. Diana had driven her. Not because Lily needed to be driven. She took the bus on normal days, had been taking the bus since second grade, the specific independent competence of a child who had a route and knew it. Diana had driven her because it was the first day back, and she wanted to. Lily had let her. At the drop-off loop, she'd gotten out of the car and adjusted her backpack. Both straps, weight distributed, and she'd turned back to the window. Mom, she said. Yeah, Diana said. I'm okay, she said. I know, Diana said. You can go to work, Lily said. I know, Diana said. You're still sitting here, Lily said. Diana looked at her. At 8 years old, standing in a school drop-off loop, with her backpack on and George's ear sticking out of the front pocket, she'd started keeping him there, said it was so he could see things, and the expression of someone who was ready for the day and was waiting for her mother to be ready too. I just need a second, Diana said. Lily looked at her. She came back to the window. She put her hand on the car door. Mom, she said. Yeah, Diana said. You were in two places at once, she said, that morning. I tried, Diana said. You were, Lily said. You were at the courthouse and you were with me. She looked at her mother. I felt you there, the whole time. Diana looked at her daughter, at the yellow shirt under her open coat. She'd been wearing it every day since the hospital. Would keep wearing it until it fell apart probably, the specific stubborn attachment of a child who had made a decision about a piece of clothing and wasn't revisiting it. At George's ear in the front pocket. At 8 years old, who had just said the truest thing anyone had said to her in 3 months. Go, Diana said. You're going to be late. Lily grinned. The specific sudden grin of someone who had said the thing they came back to say and was satisfied. She turned. She walked into school. Diana sat in the drop-off loop for a minute after. She wasn't crying. She was just sitting. With the specific full quiet of someone who had been through something and was on the other side of it, and was taking a moment to understand that. She was on the other side. Not finished, there were 11 more payments to make, and a follow-up appointment in January in school districts that could still shift, and all the ordinary, ongoing difficulty of a life that was not resolved but was continuing. But she was on the other side of the morning. The morning that had asked everything of her, she'd given it everything. And she was still here. Lily was still here. They were both still here. She put the car in drive. She went to work. January. Lily's follow-up appointment was at 9. Diana had taken the morning off work. Not a half day, the whole morning, because some things deserved the whole morning. They walked in together. Lily had her backpack, both straps, George in the front pocket, ear out, seeing things. Dr. Okafor came in at 9:15. She looked at Lily. She looked at the chart. She looked at Lily again. Everything looks exactly as it should, she said. Lily nodded, like she'd expected that. Any questions? Dr. Okafor said. When can I run again? Lily said. Next week, Dr. Okafor said. Take it easy the first few days. Okay, Lily said. Dr. Okafor looked at Diana. How are you doing? She said. Diana thought about the question, about what it contained. About 11 payments made and one still to go in a school district intact in Ms. Patterson, who let Lily read ahead, and a yellow shirt that had been washed so many times, the sunflower was starting to fade, but that Lily still wore every Friday because she decided Friday was Yellow Shirt Day. Good, Diana said. We're good. Dr. Okafor nodded. She left. Diana looked at Lily. Lily was already putting her coat on. Pancakes? She said. Diana looked at her. At the sunflower on the yellow shirt. At George's ear. At 8 years old on the other side of everything. Pancakes, she said. Subscribe if you're new. Share this tonight with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, who looked up from their paperwork and saw you when you needed to be seen? I read everyone. See you in the next story.